Welcome to the next episode of CoVerse, the podcast, part of the Insurance Nerds Network, where we will be shining light on the best stories and storytellers in the industry. My name is Whitney Doig, and I'm joined by my co-host, Saida Salcido, and a very special guest, Margo. Margo, it is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for being here. And of course, I have to end with let's go.
Let's go. Oh my God, look. I didn't even show you guys this. I think everybody's gonna enjoy this. We have the stickers now.
Oh, I
Yes.
love
Yes. Please send me a sticker.
We have
Yes.
the stickers and the shirts that made the big splash at ITI. Yep.
Yes. The shirts were a big deal. Well, we're super pumped to have you here. And I'm going to toss it over to Saida, who's going to tell us about what we're talking about with you today.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, hey, ladies, thank you so much, Whitney. Margo, congratulations on winning the Making Waves Award.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we want to talk about today is seeing as making waves alludes to a verb and you are actually, making actions that have these consequences. And I think it was a little clip of ITI that Bobby Srivastav shared yesterday, where she was talking about ripple making. And I just thought, like, of course, you guys won this award and you're still like talking about these ripples and like, how do you influence? So what is it that you do, Margo, that that you feel most merits this award?
Yeah, so obviously, being being a female in insurance and technology, I think obviously makes you stand out, right? Just let's start there.
Yes.
And then also being a female in insurance and technology and being in a C-suite. So being in a position that typically women don't get to in our industry statistically. But yeah, to me, it's like, we're really, with Iris in particular, with the technology side of things, we're really kind of leading the way in like three buckets. So again, I think of our culture, the diversity, the fact that we're all female and in the C-suite, and that in itself is very unique. On the insurance side, we're kind of making waves with talking to C-suite and operations and even CSRs and agents about just in general the shift that's happening in how they're doing business, right? Like, what does it mean to be a business owner in 2024? How are we handling this sort of knowledge transfer that's happening in the insurance space where we've got people aging out and new people coming in, and how are we managing this whole new sort of old versus new? How are we handling merger and acquisition? So like there's an actual business movement that's happening in insurance, and how we structure insurance in general. And then on the third side, we've got the tech, which is also moving very quickly. So we're constantly talking about what's next with the tech and how that actually feeds in downstream to all the other parts that we're talking about. How does that affect diversity? How does it affect your operations as a business and your long-term strategic planning? And then how do we put AI on that? Or how do we utilize, some of the blockchain that's coming, the data exchange, like all of that. So it's funny because I joke with my staff that I am never comfortable, because at any given time of the day, I'm doing something that no one's ever done in one of those three buckets.
Right. I love
Right?
it.
There's no playbook. Yeah.
I think that's good. I've always heard if you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And
Yes.
it seems like you're doing that. And I think that all of the influence and the impact that you're making on the industry comes from you being in that place where you're constantly getting uncomfortable. So you're driving that forward movement nonstop, even though you might be like, I'm not sure about this, but you're
Oh,
still
completely
going.
unsure. And I think people love to hear that, because most of us, whether we're in the C-suite or we're down at the bottom, we're working our way up, most of us don't know what we're doing. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, realistically, and especially because I do feel like we are in such a transition time
Yes.
in general, in
Exactly.
life, in our lives, in our company, in insurance, like everything is very much in transition.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of precedence for this hard market, for, the climate change. Like there's not a lot of things that we can look back at and say, oh, I know how this is going to play out, therefore I can plan and I can forecast. And I
Yeah.
don't think enough people talk about that. especially on the tech side, I mean, tech used to make changes in increments of a year, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. Tech is changing in months now. I mean, AI came in, it was 3.0, now it's 4.0. Now we're talking about agents. Then we're talking about putting AI into robots and they're doing things. I'm like, whoa, this has been in the last 6 months. We're talking about these things.
Yeah.
That
So like
escalated quickly.
it's so yeah, that escalated very quickly. But so all of that means that we're having meetings about tech, or we're having meetings about scaling Iris, or we're having meetings about, our diversity and our culture. And there's not a lot of people that we can turn to at the moment and ask, what do we do in this scenario? So a lot of it is making waves, is really getting out and being, I think part of my authenticity is that I'm very vocal that I do not have all of the answers. And I will not. As a leader, it's not my job to know everything.
Yes.
I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a fortune teller, even though I do have crystal balls in back here. But like, I don't know the answer to a lot of things, and that's about building a team around you and trusting the people that are coming in to work with me, that they would know, and I'm going to lean on those people. And so making waves in the fact that we're not coming out and saying we know 100% how this is going to end, and everything is going to be by the book. We're coming out and saying we're doing things that no one's ever done before, and that means we're going to be failing in public sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And we have to be comfortable with that notion that it's not always going to be 100% every time.
Yeah. And I think that there's two things for me that come out of that I think are just so neat. I love that your authenticity. I love that you just show up and you will say things that others might be afraid to say, and you'll put it out there. But I think that when you do that, there's so many people that are like, yes, yes, someone said it. And I'm so with her 1,000%. So I love that you step out in that kind of way. It makes me so happy every time I see it. And then the other thing that always stands out about me, or about you to me, is that when you talk about being a leader, the things that you say are traits of a true leader, right? Because
Thanks. I hope so.
you've got people out there that might be in leadership positions, but people don't trust them, or they are afraid to say, hey, I don't have all the answers, but you know what? It's not my job to know all the answers. It's my job to orchestrate everyone that does have all the answers and get everybody together. And there's so much pressure for leaders to know everything and be perfect. And you show up in the way that this is how it's supposed to be. And you're like challenging the status quo every single day. And I absolutely.
That's a woman thing, though. Like I've seen that a lot with female leaders. It's I don't want to say we don't have egos, because clearly we do, but it's certainly a departure from a type A person ego. And I don't know that women that really succeed all the way can afford to have that kind of ego.
Right.
And so I think that what you see, the women that do rise are the ones that end up getting into that mentality of, this can't just be about my legacy and how I look, and and this like fake facade of a company that's always upstanding and always rising and constantly, like, that's just not real, because everybody that works in corporate, like behind the scenes, that's never how it is. We miss quotas and people get fired, and oh my God, everything's not like. And if you're out in front publicly and you're not being authentic, right, and you're not able to, and your ego is driving that, you must present this sort of Stepford view of your company, right? Like, people don't anymore, they don't, they don't trust it, because after decades and decades of having these sort of glossy views of companies, we all know that that's not what's happening behind closed doors. So there's immediately, when that's the kind of company you portray, there's distrust, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think female leaders in particular that rise up have to have that piece of authenticity and that sort of departure from ego to get to where they're going. And it's almost like a fast track. It's like, that's not us. We're real. Like, sometimes we're messy. We're professional. We know what we're doing. We're experts, but you're not going to always see this glossy, magazine cover version of our company, because it's not really who we are.
Yeah. It's real. You put the real out front.
Well, I mean, guys, being in marketing, like, that's a marketing trend, a macro marketing trend right now. This
Mhm.
departure from everything being perfect and always being happy to content that plays really well when people are, less orchestrated, and they're doing selfie videos and they're talking honestly about their days. Like, that's the stuff that's resonating
Mhm.
with people today of all demographics. So like, it's so funny to me that you would, in 2024, if you've got a company, and I don't know if you guys saw my post about the South Park thing, how South Park did
I
that
did.
episode about
Yes.
insurance, right? And like the PR sort of problem that insurance is having at the moment, where we have been stereotyped as this like institution that's very out of date, old, right? And then you see these, it's so funny. I'm not going to say the company's name, but you see these like Super Bowl commercials, and it's like diversity and everyone's playing
Mhm.
football and we're a big family. And then like, but you go into those offices, nothing looks like that, and I feel like that disconnect is people, the market, like they're not fooled by it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So like, you're going to have to change with the times, and a lot of about what we build, like a lot of how we built Iris and how we market Iris and the culture behind Iris is identifying with what's happening right now and departing from that view of insurance, giving it a different view.
I love that. I love that disruption.
Yes.
Yes.
Me
Oh,
too.
that word though. We're disruptors. You're like, no, you're not.
Exactly.
You're just doing the same thing.
But doing it honestly though is so important. Like
Yeah,
I do think that especially coming from the top, having the confidence of saying, I don't have all the answers, but I'm resourceful. Like I'm not going to leave you without the answer forever. I'm
right.
just going to be honest and say, yeah, right now I don't know it. Let's find out together. That is huge. When you give somebody that confidence from the top, then you know that you're able to explore further
Yeah,
without being afraid of messing up and that being like a catastrophe, right? Like failing
right.
isn't a catastrophe, it's a learning opportunity. And as long as you just dust yourself up and go right away, then
Well, but
that's
you
what it's
learn
about.
from failure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
everything I know today is because I failed at it at some point.
Okay.
Or I ask a question, or somebody asked me a question, I didn't know the answer, and I had to go figure out the answer. Even though
Yes.
I don't necessarily equate that with failure, but either I did something and I had to go back and look at that and go, I would do that different the second time. And then take that and then do it different, which is so weird because some people don't have that jump. They're
It's
like,
true.
this was wrong. You're like, let's do it again the same way. You're like, oh my
Right.
God, did you not learn from
Yeah.
that? But then, like you said, like being able to say, like, okay, that didn't work. Let's pivot and try something else. And not having the stigma of, oh my God, you didn't do it right the first time. How dare you? Like, you must be a failure. Like that kind of culture within Iris, and even within my agencies before, that was not something that we fostered.
Right.
Like, not standing for that, because why?
Yeah.
Why would you run a company that way?
Yeah.
Makes
It
sense.
seems counterintuitive to
Yeah.
retaining good talent, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
fostering that innovation culture.
Yeah. You can't ask people to innovate and then slap their hand when they do something that doesn't immediately produce ROI in the first 5 minutes that it happens, right? So like, yeah, that's not a culture of innovation.
Yeah. I love it. I think culture is so important and something that we're going to hear people talking about a lot, a ton going forward. And I know it's something that's important to me. Everybody talks about the company culture and work-life balance, but it really all needs to come together into one cohesive thing, and it all bleeds into each other. So it all has to go and match and mesh well together. So I love hearing leaders talk
Yeah.
about, hey, let's do this differently. Hey, let's make culture at the very, very front, but actually do that and not just say that that's something that we do.
Mm.
Well, I think
Love
people
it.
focus on culture too, and we've had a lot of focus on diversity of
Mm.
gender, diversity of sexual orientation, diversity of race. But at Iris, we actually have three pillars, and the very first one is diversity of thought, meaning
Mm.
like, let's let and those things in culture are important: race, ethnicity, religion. and making sure you're having different voices. But that all feeds into, are you creating a place where you are not hampering diversity of thought? And so I have always built these teams that are, they're hard to manage, but so like I will typically have two polar opposites on a team.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So the way that I build teams are like, you can see this with insurance and tech. For every insurance person, insurance forward person that I would bring into Iris, they would have a tech counterpart and they would have to work together, right? Because this person had a lot more knowledge in one area, this person had, and unicorns are rare. And so if we're going to build an insurance technology company, these people must learn how to communicate, and they're polar opposite personalities, sometimes race, definitely sex and ethnicity, like they're opposite usually, right? Age-wise, they're typically opposite. And so we put them in these scenarios, and I like to call them the SmackDown scenarios because really that's what ends up happening.
I like it.
But in order to thrive here, you must be able to communicate effectively with people that have radically different thought processes and skill sets than you. And that should be regardless, that should be, company wide. But specifically, it's how I build my management teams. So my management teams are super diverse. My C-suite's diverse, my board's diverse, our middle management. It's like I've got somebody that's super meticulous and detail oriented and color coding everything. And then I got somebody that's just a mind strategy, big picture thinker. And these two people, I'm taking advice from both of them, and I feel like the moderator in a lot of times. So I need this person's view and I need this person's view so that I can land somewhere decision-wise in the middle.
In between, yeah.
And I don't see enough people building teams that way. And I'll tell you why, because it's not easy to manage the personalities. It's
imagine.
Hard.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to hire a bunch of people on a team that all get along day one, have the same personality, but then you don't get any of that innovation, diversity of thought, challenging of ideas, because everybody's the same. They're a clone. And what you typically see in those corp structures are teams that are segmented like that. So like the tech team is all very similar, and then the sales team is all very similar, right? And they have these similar, MOs, and then they clash, right?
Yeah,
Tech,
it's like clicks.
Product always fighting with sales, and sales is always fighting with customer success and implementation, because they're all basically, clones of each other. But what happens when you break that mold and you put some of those personalities all within that team is you'll find that they'll actually communicate better cross-functionally, because the person that's the, color-coded nerd here is talking to the person that's color-coded nerd here, and they're forming, and that communication is happening. So I think all the way back to corporate structure, we're seeing changes in this way. And a lot of that is, I think, being led by female founders.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's so exciting. It's such an exciting time to be in insurance.
What a time to be alive.
Yes. Who says insurance is boring? Never, ever. Not
Never.
True.
Yes. And I do have my award here. It goes on my tchotchke shelf over here. And I keep it with me. So it is incredibly, honoring to, especially the other honorees that were presented with the award. To be in that league is exciting, especially because sometimes in the day-to-day, you don't get a lot of thanks. Right? It's kind of a thankless job, especially as a startup, right? Like it's just a grind all the time. So it's very refreshing and humbling to get the Making Waves Award. So
so well deserved. And we're so excited that you joined us today. And we're going to wrap up quick. I want to tell all of our listeners, thanks for joining. And we're going to see you on the next one. Margo, it was a pleasure talking.
Thanks
for joining us today.
Thank you so much.